So, Terabithia, let's read Chapter 9, The Evil Spell. On Easter Monday, the rain began again in earnest. It was as though the elements were conspiring to ruin their short week of freedom. Jess and Leslie sat cross-legged on the porch at the Burkes, watching the wheels of a truck go by and spraying muddy water. "This isn't 55 miles an hour," Jess muttered. Just then, something came out of the window. "Litter bug!" Leslie screamed. Jess stood up too. "Why'd you do that?" "What I want to do is go to Terabithia," she said, looking, even though it was raining. "Okay, let's just go." "Okay," she said. "Why not?" She got her boots and raincoat and considered the umbrella. "Do you think we can swing across the creek holding an umbrella?" "No. We better stop by your house and get your boots and things." "I don't have anything that fits," he says. "I'll just go like this." "I'll get you an old coat of Bill's," she said. "What are you kids doing?" It was the same words that Jess' mother had used, but it didn't come out the same way. Judy's eyes were kind of fuzzed over as she spoke, and her voice sounded as if it had been broadcast from miles away. "We didn't mean to bother you, Judy. That's all right. I'm stuck right now. I might as well stop. Have you had any lunch?" "We can get something ourselves." Judy's eyes focused. "Your boots are on." "Oh, yeah. We're going to go out for a while." "Is it raining again?" "Yeah. I used to like to walk in the rain," Judy said. "Well, if you two can manage." "Sure. Is Bill back yet?" "No. He said he wouldn't be back until late. Not to worry." "Fine," she said. "Okay," she said suddenly, and her eyes popped open. "Oh!" She almost ran back to her room. Leslie was grinning. She came unstuck. He wondered what it would be like to have a mother whose stories were inside her head instead of marching across the television screen all day. He followed Leslie up the hall to where she was pulling things out of the closet. She handed him a big raincoat and a hat. "No boots," she said. "How about a pair of clumps?" "Clumps? What are that? What are those?" "Cleats. They look like cleats. They're size 12. No, I'd lose them in the mud. I'll just go barefoot." "Hey," she said, "me too." The ground was cold. The icy mud sent little thrills of pain up their legs, so they ran, splashing through the puddles and slushing through the mud. Prince Terrian bounded ahead, leaping fish-like from one brown sea to the next, then turning back to get them to go forward, nipping at their heels and splashing their already muddy jeans. When they got to the bank of the creek, they stopped. It was an awesome sight. Just like in the Ten Commandments, when the water came rushing into Moses' path and swept the Egyptians away. "Wow," Leslie looked respectfully. "Yeah," Jess said. "That's a lot of water in that creek." But the rope was still twisted around the branch of the crabapple tree. His stomach felt cold. "Maybe we better forget it today." "Come on, Jess, we can make it across." The hood of Leslie's raincoat had fallen back, and her hair was plastered to her forehead. She unsnapped the top of her coat with her left hand. "Here," she said, "stick PT in the jacket here with me." "I'll carry him, Leslie. With the raincoat, he'll slip right out the bottom." She was impatient to be gone, so Jess scooped up the wet dog and shoved him into the cave of Leslie's raincoat. "You gotta hold his rear with your left arm and swing with your right." I know. She moved forward to get a running start. "Hold tight." "Good gosh, Jess." He shut his mouth. He wanted to shut his eyes too, but he forced himself to watch her run back, race for the bank, leap, and jump off, landing gracefully on her feet on the far side. "Catch!" He stuck out his hand, but he was watching Leslie and PT and not concentrating on the rope, which slipped off the end of his fingertips and swung in a large arc out of his reach. He jumped and grabbed it, and shutting his mind to the sound and sight of the water, he ran back, speeded forward. The cold stream lapped his bare heels momentarily, but then he was up in the air and falling awkwardly and landing on his bottom. PT was on him immediately, his muddy paws all over the raincoat and his pink tongue all over Jessie's wet face. Leslie's eyes were sparkling. "All right, King of Terabithia, get up and let's go to our kingdom." The King of Terabithia snuffled and wiped his face on the back of his hand. "I will arise," he said with dignity, "when thou removes the fool dog off my gut." They went to Terabithia on Tuesday and again on Wednesday. The rain continued sporadically, so that by Wednesday the creek had swollen to the trunk of the crabapple tree, and they were running through ankle-deep water to make their flight into Terabithia. And on the opposite bank, Jess was more careful to land on his feet. Sitting in cold, wet britches for an hour was no fun, even in the Magic Kingdom. For Jess, the fear of crossing rose with the height of the water in the creek. Leslie never seemed to hesitate, so Jess could not hang back. But even though he could force his body to follow after, his mind hung back, wanting to cling to the crabapple tree the way Joyce Ann might cling to Mama's skirt. While they were sitting in the castle on Wednesday, it began suddenly to rain so hard that the water came up through the top of the shack in icy streams. Jess tried to huddle away from the worst of them, but there was no escaping. "Do you know what's in my mind, O King?" Leslie dumped out. "What?" "I think some evil being has put a curse on our beloved kingdom." "That's the weather report." In the dim light, he could see Leslie's face freeze into the most queenly pose, the kind of expression she usually reserved for vanquished enemies. She didn't want to kid. She instantly repented his unkingly manner. Leslie chose to ignore it. "Let us go even up into the sacred grove and inquire of the spirits what this evil might be and how we must combat it. For of a truth I perceive that this is no ordinary rain that is falling on our kingdom." "Quite right, Jessie. Quite right, Queen," Jessie mumbled. Under the pines, even the rain lost its driving power. Without the filtered light of the sun, it was almost dark, and the sound of the rain hitting the pine branches high above their heads filled the grove with a weird, timeless music. Dread lay on Jessie's stomach like a hunk of cold, undigested donut. Leslie lifted her arms and face toward the dark green canopy. "Oh, spirits of the grove," she said solemnly, "we have come here on behalf of our beloved kingdom, which lies even now under the spell of some evil unknown force. Give us wisdom to discern this evil and power to overcome it." She nudged Jess with her elbow. He raised his arms. Yeah, please listen, spirits." She seemed satisfied. At least she didn't poke him again. She just stood there quietly as if she was listening respectfully to someone talking to her. Jess was shivering, whether from the cold or the place he didn't know, but he was glad when she turned to leave the grove. All he could think of was dry clothes and a cup of hot coffee and maybe plunking down in front of the TV for a couple hours. He was obviously not worthy of being king of Terabithia. Who ever heard of a king who was scared of tall trees and a bit of rain? He swung across the creek, almost too disgusted with himself to be afraid. Halfway across, he looked down and stuck his tongue out at the roaring water below. "Who's afraid of the big bad wolf?" he sang to himself. Plodding up the hill through the mud and the beaten-down grass, he slammed his bare feet down hard. "Left, right, left," addressed him inside his head. "Why don't we change our clothes and watch TV, or do something over at your house?" said Leslie. He felt like hugging her. "I'll make some coffee," he said. "Yuck," she said, smiling. It had seemed to Jess, when he went to bed Wednesday night, that he could relax and everything was going to be okay. But he woke up in the middle of the night with the horrible realization it was still raining. He would just have to tell Leslie he wouldn't go to Terabithia that day. After all, she had told him that when she was working on the house with Bill, and he hadn't questioned her. It wasn't so much that he minded telling Leslie that he was afraid to go. It was that he minded being afraid. It was as though he had been made with a great piece missing, the one Maybelle's puzzle, like one of Maybelle's puzzles. It would be better to be born without an arm than to go through life with being afraid like this. He hardly slept the rest of the night, listening to the horrid rain and knowing that no matter how high the creek came, Leslie would still want to cross it. And there they are, in the grove, asking the spirits to stop raining.